Alright, so is my generation Gen Z boring? I think that it kinda my generation is kinda boring, but not for the reasons that people think. When people talk about this generation, I feel like a lot of nuances and a lot of the explanations are usually ignored. I think that people tend to just shit on us without knowing the reasons why people do certain things. So that will be kind of my whole point of this video. But is my generation boring? Yeah, kind of. I'll throw myself into this too. So when this video gets released on Friday, Infinity Song will be playing a free concert in Brooklyn, which I will not be going to because I just don't feel like going. And that's crazy because it's a free concert, but I just do not have, I guess, the feeling to go out and see them. Even though I do like the band, I just don't feel like going. I already saw them once, and I don't need to see him. I really need to see him again right now. Maybe some other time when they come around, but who knows? Momo will be playing in the city in August, so I might go see that. I did really like her EP, so maybe I'll see her for her solo show. But the band as a whole, I'm good, and I guess I'm boring for that. So yeah, crazy because I really do like music, but I don't know. I kept trying to talk myself into wanting to go see them, but I just couldn't. I tried my best, but I couldn't talk myself into going out and seeing them. I think I just rather focus on making more videos right now. Now that I've got this new microphone, I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and I just really want to get all of that done because I really want to grow this channel, even though I've been failing at that for the past 5 years. But anyway, is my generation boring? Yes, but not for the reasons people are willing to explain or admit to. As you know, with the last video I made, I think, again, which is I think the one where it said that Gen Z had no media representation, I mentioned millennials and Gen X and their whole partying excursions, especially millennials. And I mentioned that I thought that was mostly just white people doing white people things, because most other people, meaning ethnic minorities, would not go out and try and get into fights or run away from cops, because there's a pretty good chance that will not end the same way it would for a white person. But what I thought more about and what I came to is this idea of opposites attracting, which technically is not the best term when it comes to most things, but I think in this context, the way I'll explain it, I think it'll work. So I'll explain it now. So what do I mean opposites attract? So let's talk about eras and how it plays into this. So millennials, Gen X, they grew up in what I would consider to be much more stable times than we did. I would also throw the boomers into this too, but since they had Vietnam, I guess you can't really say that they grew up in really as stable times as Gen X or millennials. And also, of course, the political assassinations that took place in the 60s, which were plenty. So, yeah. I get, I don't know if the boomers are the best people to talk about, because they're just an anomaly in of itself. Boomers are just too much of an anomaly to really bring into this. So I just want to talk about millennials and Gen X for this video. So millennials and Gen X mostly grew up in very stable times, right? I mean, we talk about like older millennials from the 80s, they spent most of their childhood and their early adult years in stability, right? The later millennials, they had 9/11, and obviously it was a little different for them, but for the most part, it was still stable because 9/11, whether you want to admit it or not, is an anomaly in America compared to the rest of the world. The Middle East gets bombed every day, constantly, never ending for some reason. But America, not so much so. But I should get back to my point. The Gen X and millennials tend to grew up mostly in very stable times, even with the Iraq War. That was an overseas thing. That was not something that was really directly affecting us as a country in America. We were pretty much separated from the violence that was taking place over there. And until the 2008 crisis, America didn't really feel any sort of economic strain or anything. There was that period in the 70s when gas prices were really high and things were so bad the Knicks managed to win a championship. But again, that was like a very short period of time. They still had Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and Sabbath and Queen and Kiss and Aerosmith, and they had The Godfather and Rocky and Star Wars and all this other shit. The culture was still very good anyway. The point I tried to make is that Gen X millennials grew up in pretty stable times, and so because of that, they were looking for the chaos. And where places were chaotic at that time between the 70s and the 90s than the club. The club is the most chaotic place that you can go to at that point in time in America, except maybe the hood, but nobody's going to the hood. Oh, I see you live there. The club is the most stable or most chaotic place you'll find in America at that point in time between the 70s and, I'll extend it to the 2000s. Maybe the 2010s too. Should I extend it to the 2010s? I'm not sure. But basically, the peak of the Gen X and Millennials time when it came to looking for chaos would have been in the clubs, right? That's why they get so crazy, because everything is very stable. Ever seen a Gen X movie? The whole point of a Gen X movie is that the main character's life is so stable that they're bored with their life and they go looking for chaos. There was some clip of a movie I saw. I didn't see the whole movie, but I saw a clip of the movie. And apparently the guy was like a white collar working guy, and apparently his life was so boring that he decided to rob a McDonald's. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would have picked the Popeyes, at least because they have good food. I don't know, was McDonald's good back then? McDonald's never tasted that good to me. The point is that the Gen X movie the Gen X movie showed a guy who had a pretty stable life looking for chaos. And the millennials had those weird party movies, which I guess when I think about it kind of explains why dating parties are such a big thing. Because again, how much more chaotic could millennials and Gen X's lives have been if the only real chaotic thing they had to do was go to a party, Maybe that's why dating parties were the way they were. Maybe Diddy was bored too. Who knows? That's my point there. Which is that millennials and Gen X had such stable lives that they were looking for chaos. Now, let's go over to my generation. The difference between millennials and Gen Z is that millennials pretty much remember a time when America was very stable. My generation has not known this. I was born in 2004, so the Iraq War is pretty much in full swing at that point. I myself have never really known what a stable America was I've never lived in a stable America, but I am aware that there was such a point in time where America was stable, where tragedies were an anomaly. Um, One of the things I think was very prominent during my childhood was school shootings, because those things happen a lot, actually. I think once a month, maybe not once a month, but you know, it was enough where it was a regular thing where you would hear about school shootings. I was actually in a school shooting once in my middle school. Someone apparently threatened to shoot up my middle school, and they lied to us and said that there was some bank robbery chase going on, so they had us pile into the classrooms and hide. We didn't. I had no idea there was a school. It was gonna be a potential shooting until years later when I looked it up. I was like, that's kind of weird. When I thought about it, when it randomly popped into my mind that why would the school shut down on account of a fucking chase, a police chase. Until I looked it up, and apparently I found out that someone had threatened to shoot up the school was apparently on the way to shoot up the school. So that was fun. That was just one aspect of the whole chaotic thing. Of course, I grew up in white America, in New York, white America. So not fun, as you can imagine. From what I remember, there were kids who partied, but did like stupid shit. But it was all like the really rich kids who could afford that. But for the most part, most people I knew didn't really do that. I never really heard about parties going on. I would never hear about that sort of thing. Granted, I spent most of my time by myself, so maybe I just wasn't really in tune with it. But I'm pretty sure that stuff wasn't really a thing that happened because the chaos was very much a normal part of our lives. Remember, we went not just through school shootings, but COVID too. And then when I entered college, the whole Israel-Palestine thing happened. In my last year of high school, the war between Russia and Ukraine happened. And of course, Trump is president now, which makes things worse. So basically, Gen Z life has been very chaotic, very much so. Almost nonstop, I guess. So I guess people say that Gen Z is boring. I guess what they mean is that that my generation doesn't seem very fun. I'm not really sure why older generations are concerned with younger generations having fun, because I feel like the older generations kind of policed the younger generations into not having fun. First thing is like the phones and the internet. I know I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite for saying it, but it's not our fault that the phones and the internet were kind of pushed onto us, right? Like, we were kids, we didn't know what we were getting into. And to be fair to our parents, they didn't know either. This is new technology that was introduced, so I can't really blame them for not knowing well enough what was going to happen. But at the same time, someone knew, and someone saw it, and somebody didn't do anything about it. And now it's become such an important part of our lives that taking it away would actually be detrimental to anyone without an internet connection. You can't do anything without the internet now. If I want to buy tickets to a show, it has to be online. I have never seen an in-person ticket before, except maybe for the movies, but even then, you have to pay online for it beforehand. The bus, right? You take the MTA. There's no physical ticket anymore. It's just transferred. There's no MTA card for it. You have to pay with the Omni card. And I have not seen an Omni card yet. I've only seen people tap with their phones or their credit cards. So that's the end of that. And there's other things too, but I'll probably end up going on a tangent if I try to talk about all of that. But basically, the internet has become such a part of our lives that it quite literally cannot be removed. It is partially the fault of the older generations for making it such a way that we cannot remove it now. I forgot to mention this in my first, when I was editing this video. I realized I forgot to mention my other point about the relationship between millennials and Gen X with Gen Z and the policing, which is not just the internet, but also just the way we were raised. Because from what I remember, partying was very much, I guess, what's the word? Vindicated? Not vindicated, but very much like it was put down as a very bad thing. That the older generation just say, you shouldn't go out and party, you shouldn't go out and, have sex or have girlfriends or whatever the fuck else. That was like a very much, it was a very hot topic when I was in high school and middle school. Like you would have all the health classes and the teachers always tell you, abstinence is great, and you shouldn't have sex, and if you're gonna have sex, use condoms, you shouldn't drink, and you shouldn't do drugs, and you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And the parents too, of course, were very much a part of that too. They always made sure that they knew where you were with the Life 360, if you remember that. If you were aware of that at the time, they used that very much, and they would watch you wherever you would go. I suppose it's kind of absurd now that when we hear them say, Gen Z doesn't have fun when they pretty much made sure that kind of thing wasn't possible, especially once COVID came around. The only kids that were really partying were the kids whose parents didn't really care enough about them to pay attention to them whenever they went out anywhere. I think that's the thing that I came to realize when years later when I thought about it, was that the only kids who were going out to party and have fun were the ones whose parents weren't paying attention to them all the time, really. The ones who, I guess, cared about their kids were the ones who were always policing them and making sure that they quite really could not go out and do stuff, But a lot of the criticisms that the older generation has of the younger generation is really just a reflection of the older generation. The whole thing about, kids don't have fun anymore because they are too stuck on their phones. But there's no place for anyone to have fun but on the phones. Maybe I'll say, you can go to the bar or you can go to the club. The club, first of all, is incredibly expensive. Removing the phone is not going to fix the problem with the club. DJs are shit. You don't need to have a DJ anymore. Your DJ is completely obsolete. Why would you need a DJ when you could just pull up Spotify and play a couple songs and be done with it? And the prices are just insane. The price is not worth it at all for what the club is offering. And as far as the bars go, I've seen the bars around my town. They are depressing as fuck. Forget the price. The bar just looks like sadness, and I can get sad and drunk in the comfort of my home. Matter of fact, look right here. All right. You think I can only do this at the bar? I can do this at home too. So that's fun, right? The best way I could say it is that the older generations have kind of become, maybe unawarely, also they basically become the enforcers of the surveillance state. They have built the technology, they have implemented it into our lives, and yet they criticize us for not being able to live without it, despite the fact that most of us do not even know what that kind of life would be like, and the fact that all our lives, have become basically dependent upon us needing this technology. You can't do anything without the technology. You can't be entertained, you can't go outside, you can't pay for food, you can't do nothing without the technology in your life, you know. And if you think it's not possible, do it yourself. I dare you to try. Another part of it is the death of the third space, and I want to say that it's true, but truth be told, I have never or very rarely experienced a third space that was for a young teen or adult, or an older teen and adult, sorry. Like someone between the ages of 18 and 21. I would say it's very rare for anyone to find such things or places to hang out at that time. It's not like a college or wherever. I think it's very hard to find. So with all the chaos that I've mentioned that Gen Z goes through, because I completely forgot that I was trying to make a point about the whole stability and chaos thing. But with all the chaos that my generation goes through, I think it's no surprise that we tend to look for stability. I think it's very important for us to have stability because for a lot of us, we haven't really experienced that kind of thing before. That's why I think we tend to avoid the clubs and the bars, and why we tend to be more religious. It's not necessarily a conservative thing that people I think are looking for. It's more so just a thing where we need something to plant our feet and be able to go back to without all of the, or in spite of the chaos, without the goddamn, without the stability, the chaos isn't very appealing at all. It's very much a terrifying thing, really. I mean, too much of anything is bad. The millennials had too much stability, so they got absolutely fucking wild, and Gen Z lives is so unstable and uncertain that they need as much stability as they can get. So basically, what we need is a middle of the road answer here. Enough stability and enough chaos where we can make a well-adjusted generation of people. Will that happen? Who knows? But my point is that the whole thing about stability and chaos is why I think Gen Z is considered boring, because things are so crazy that we need some sort of stable thing to plant our feet in. Otherwise, I think we'd be completely lost. The Knicks. Remember you seen all the videos of the Knicks fans going crazy after their championship. I think that's what Gen Z would be like if there was any realm of stability. We'd be all going fucking wild. I mean, they burned a bus down and like 63 people got arrested. Some kid got put in a coma, from what I heard. So I think that pretty much sums us up. I think we're just waiting for this stable thing just to have an excuse to go crazy. You give us any sort of stability whatsoever, and we will go absolutely fucking mad. But I don't think that's gonna happen for this generation. At least I think that time has passed because there's just too much craziness and not enough stability. So I think a lot of us will just pass on that because it's too much. Too much of anything is bad for you. Too much stability is gonna make you do stupid shit, and too much chaos is gonna make you too conservative and too rigid in your life. You wanna know something crazy? I get videos on my algorithm sometimes about millennials, and sometimes I look in the comments and there are people who will say, these kids are gonna have a crazy crisis or midlife crisis when they get to that age when I guess crises happen. And I don't know about you, but whenever I read these comments, it almost seems like they're kind of enjoying or reveling in the idea that we'll have a crisis when we get to our middle ages. I don't know if I'm crazy for saying that, but it seems very much like they're enjoying the idea of us going mad. I'm not sure if I'm stupid for saying that, but it feels like that, Like you have to read these comments for yourself, but that's the way I interpret it. But yeah, that's basically why. Or basically, if you want to know, if you're looking for the answer of what Gen Z is boring, yeah, sure they are, but there's more to it than just, Gen Z is not fun. There's reasons for it, and you gotta be willing to look deeper into it in order to understand it, because otherwise you're just gonna keep repeating the same bullshit over and over again. And that's basically all I have to say on that topic. So, yeah, see ya.